Good day. Men of goodwill have decided to intervene in what's going on in the world. One of such men of goodwill is Pope Leo XIV. Pope Leo XIV was quick in reaching out to Russian President Putin following the brazen attack by the Ukrainian intelligence agency against bombers deep inside Russia. That also followed a lot of actions, which the Russians consider to be terrorist actions against bridges and trains in Russia. Everybody knows now that the Russians will respond. In fact, they have restated that there shall be retribution for the Ukrainians. The Vatican media recently released a report that Pope Leo speaks by phone with President Putin. Pope Leo XIV and the Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke on phone on Wednesday. Matteo Bruni, director of the Holy See Press, told reporters that the Pope and the President discussed the humanitarian situation as well as the need to facilitate aid where necessary. They talked about the war in Ukraine. If you ask me, the Pope was calling on Putin to tamper be more humane and not do something very decisive that may affect the world. Pope Leo is trying to prevent Putin from taking an action that may escalate the war beyond what it is. And Pope Leo is not the only one who has tried to reach out to Putin. The American president, after 3 days after the event, finally spoke to President Putin. And from what we gather, he told Putin that America had no hand in it. But in a Truth social media post, he stated that Putin was very firm in saying that there shall be revenge on the part of the Russians. Well, while so many people are worried and reaching out to Putin and trying to tell him to tamper, messy, be very even-handed in your response, nobody really knows what the Russians are going to do. And I can tell you this, there are some group of people, some group of presidents who have not reached out to Putin to tell him not to take action. Those ones will be the presidents and the BRIC nations. Beyond that also, there are allies of Russia who are urging him on and telling him that he needs to show a decisive action against Ukraine. Hello and welcome to my channel, Ibima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs. As you continue to support me, please subscribe, share, and make comments on our video whenever you watch them. Will the comments help us in getting ideas of how people are responding to our videos? But thank you so far for the support I've been getting. One thing I know, and most people who follow Russian politics and Vladimir Putin will tell you is that he is a very, very religious person. Many people will not know this because the Western press paints him out as being near a demon. But he had 3 meetings with the last Pope Francis. He had a number of meetings also with Pope Benedict and even Pope John Paul before he died. Putin is a religious man. Nobody can take that away. And it is because of his religiosity that many people feel that he has this slow approach to the war in Ukraine. They have accused him of being slow because Putin has put humanitarian considerations well ahead of strategic gains. The destruction that may have come to Kiev has been tempered by the fact that he always considers that the civilian populace. But this is not a picture you will get in the West, I agree. And besides that, Putin also knows the implication of civilian casualties in war. He knows the humanitarian implications of so many things in war because he's a lawyer. So he knows a lot about these things. So he's a religious man. And if one of the things that he holds against Ukraine is that the Ukraine government has gone full blast against the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine, and they have been cracking down on people who follow the Russian Orthodox Church, calling them all manners of names because of the cultural influence that church has. And it is that is one of the reasons why they claim that they are pursuing this war in Ukraine today, because they felt that there was an attack. The Russians felt there was an attack on the Russian language, the Russian way of life, and the Russian culture and religion, because there's a large, significant population of Russians in Ukraine. So now we got also later on to know that President Putin spoke with President Trump. President Trump announced that the discussion was a 1.5 hour one, and that Putin reaffirmed that there shall be revenge. What he didn't state is the nature and type of the revenge. A lot of people are worried, and after that conversation, 1.5 hour conversation with Putin, the State Department in America, the embassy in Ukraine, put out a statement that Americans in Ukraine should be very aware of where air raid shelters are in Kiev. What may be targeted and destroyed in Kiev, we don't know. What kind of missile systems the Russians will use, we don't know. Nobody knows what the Russians will do. And that alone is beginning to cause tensions among people who are observing this war and waiting for for retribution, for Putin's revenge and the revenge of the Russians for the brazen attack on their 5 air bases that led to the destruction of their bombers. One thing, too, we have come to find out is that while some world leaders are showing concern, there are a group of world leaders that are in full support of what Russia is doing. Russia is well situated among the BRIC countries. These BRIC countries are made up of Brazil, India, China, and South Africa. The whole of the global South tends to support Russia, a large majority of the global South. There are a number of countries who form the Ukraine Contact Group. There are about 50 of them. But in the larger geopolitical and diplomatic world, many people throw their weight with Russia. They do so not only giving Russia diplomatic and political cover, they also buy things, buy hydrocarbon, buy military hardware, buy a lot of stuff from Russia that has kept the Russian economy going despite 22,000 rounds of sanctions. So the Iranians are also another group of people who support the Russians and are urging them to take decisive action. They have an interest in seeing that Ukraine is taught a lesson. In fact, it is the Iranians who sold the Shahid drones to Russia that Russia used so effectively in blowing up the air defense systems of Ukraine in Kiev. This Shahid is now been modified by the Russians, and it has a new variant, and these are now jet-powered variants, and that's a technology that the Iranians use in supporting Russia. So now we know that Russia has a lot of friends in its camp. It has North Korea. North Korea is a very interesting one. North Korea has come and restated that they are in full support of whatever actions that Putin takes. You should remember that North Korea just supported Russia in the Kursk operations when they pushed out the Ukrainians who had occupied the part of the Kursk territory, Oblast in Russia. The North Koreans were actively fighting with the Russians, and Putin just recently even commended them. And during the Victory Day parade, a group of North Korean soldiers were part of that parade, and they were commended, and the one was even hugged by Putin. So Putin is not lacking friends, and is not lacking people who are trying to hold him off from taking action against Ukraine. But how about the Ukrainians? The silence of the Russians, the slow, methodical way in which they are going about trying to craft and plot their revenge against Ukraine has put a lot of European countries on edge. First, Putin also addressed the people of the Russians, and he stated clearly that now the regime in Kiev is illegitimate, and then he called them terrorists. He calls them an illegitimate government that came into power through a coup in 2014. And now they have transited from being a government to being a terrorist organization because they have gone ahead and now they are bombing civilian infrastructure and killing civilians across the. Don't forget that one of the things that prompted this war was that there was continuous shelling over the course of 8 years into the Donbas region by the Ukrainian army that led the Russians to say they needed to go protect the Russian population or Russian-speaking population in the Donbas. That is the reason why we have this special military operation, as the Russians call it. But the Putin, after addressing that, the Russians has now come to say that yes, they have turned to being a terrorist organization. He now views Zelensky as a terrorist. He views every member of the administration as a terrorist. Those are very ominous words. That's a different way of looking at him. And I guess he's saying is that if he takes out a terrorist, it won't be like he's not looking at Zelensky as a sovereign anymore. He's looking at him as a terrorist who is fair game. The British, the Germans, the French, and most of the Europeans who have been fully supporting the Ukrainians have now found that yeah, they're now the way the Russians are going, they need to start doing something. Britain has said they are going to go into a war footing, they're going to raise money. We all know that the British economy is in bad straits, and one of the things political analysts will always tell you is that in times of in bad economic times, you try to find a war to try and stimulate your economy. The Germans who went into pacifist mode after the World War II, after the defeat in World War II, are now moving towards militarization under Friedrich Merz. He is now saying that they would increase their budget for military spending. And this is also becoming a worry to some of the European countries who also have this same fear of a huge and mighty Germany right in the center of Europe. It is an interesting thing to have a huge and mighty Russia at the far fringes of Europe, but a huge and mighty Germany, militarized Germany, has always been the reason why Europe is very afraid of Germany. Now that fear is being transformed and translated to the Russians. The Baltic states are quaking. They are in fear because Donald Trump has been signaling that he's not going to support Ukraine anymore. I tell you, as I said in my last video, that Donald Trump does not have the love for Ukraine because he knows what Zelensky and the Ukrainians did to him in his first regime. He's not so keen about throwing more military hardware and more military resources to Ukraine. So they worry about it. The signal is clear that Donald Trump is not going to keep giving military support to Ukraine. So the Baltic states are really worried. And a Russia that is angry, militarized, is one they fear. And in NATO that may not come to their help is also another one that they fear terribly. It's a scenario they fear very terribly. Now we also have a situation where NATO, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, just put out a statement that he would call for, they will adopt a reality where um, uh, all the NATO members will have to increase their military spending to 5%. 5% is now the benchmark. The 5% that was taunted by Donald Trump in his first presidency and is restated again in his second term as president is now the benchmark that Rutte is saying is going to insist that all the NATO countries. So everybody is gearing up for war with Russia. The only person that is not afraid of Russia are probably the ones who feel that they should do trade with Russia. Viktor Orban is one of them. Slovak President Fico is one of them. So Russia, does still have friends. Serbian president, even though they are not part of any geopolitical associations, like they've all strong relationship with Russia for a long time. And much as they have been trying to get them to condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they have tried to stay neutral on this matter. So a lot has changed. Russia is now the boogeyman that everybody is afraid of. But at this point in time, when somebody has gone to poke the bear, the whole world is waiting for retribution. How and what shape and manner, what is the scope of Russian response to Zelensky's affront and the Ukrainian affront? As regards to Zelensky, he has signaled clearly that this war is going to continue. He insists that the war should continue. They are losing on the war on the front. They are losing astronomically in the Sumy province. They are losing around the province. They are losing in the Donbass. They are losing in Zaporizhia. They are losing in Kharkiv. But now he's moving more relentlessly that the world should sanction Russia. But sanctions is not one of the great things that will work again. He called the memorandum that the Russians gave to the Ukrainian peace delegation, he called it useless, called it trash. He said, it's an ultimatum. That's what he says. It's an ultimatum to them that they should surrender and that he did not recognize it as something he should take serious. And so he signaled clearly that they will continue with the war. The Russians have said that now they hold 4 oblasts, but if the war continues, they probably will be coming to the next round of negotiation. And the discussion then will be that they will be talking about 8 oblasts. The Russians are winning this war. Everybody knows that. Don't believe anything the Western press tells you. They are winning in innovation. They are winning in technology. They are winning on the ground. They are outperforming the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are the back foot, losing territory every day. But Zelensky is defiant. His friends are pushing him and urging on. Keir Starmer is urging him on. Macron is urging him on. And while all these countries that are urging him on and giving him resources and giving him encouragement, none of them is losing their own people. Ukraine has lost estimated number of 500 to 1 million people. But it is the loss in demographics, the demographics restructuring of Ukraine that really is the problem. They've lost a lot of people as refugees. They are now scattered all over Europe as refugees. Some are in America here. Some have been taken over. They've lost a lot of their young men. They've lost so much. The Ukrainian nation that went into this war is not the Ukrainian nation that is now. So all Ukraine is doing now is saying, damage Russia on our behalf. Damage Russia on our behalf. But nobody wants to engage with the big polar bear out there. We wait and see what kind of retribution Putin and the Russians will rain down on Ukraine. Will it be Oreshnik? Will it be tactical nuclear weapons? We don't know. But what we know is that the Russians are thinking of something decisive and something brutal that will make everybody take notice. Just the fear and of the weight is already making a lot of people sweat. I come to the end of today's video. I have said quite a number of things. Most are out there. Many people have their own opinions about what I may have said. Because no doubt about it, Ukraine enjoys tremendous support all over the world. But that's also the amount of support Russia enjoys. You will never know that because when you watch BBC and watch CNN and watch all the mainstream media, you will think that it's only the Ukrainians that have support. No, it's not true. There's support for Russia all across the world, just as there's support for Ukraine all across the world. This war is a bad one, and we hope that somehow there will be a finality and a solution to it. Thank you for being with me to this part of the program. Thank you. Subscribe, share, like, make comments. I appreciate the great support I've got in the past few days. I hope it will continue. Thank you very much. See you in my next video.